Right.
The timing of this.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive, right at 5:30.
Up there and grab one. Yeah.
This time we'll call the April 15th meeting of the Cookeville City Council to order. Do we have a roll call, please?
Councilman Womack.
Here.
Councilman Miller.
Here.
Mayor Shelton.
Here.
Vice Mayor Wheaton.
Here.
Councilman Walker.
Here.
5 present.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite those that wish to do so stand for the invocation given out by Chris McMichael, pastor of the Grafton Word Church, followed by the pledge of allegiance to the United States flag.
Father, we come to you in Jesus' name, and we thank you for our city. We thank you for the safety of our citizens. I thank you for the wisdom of God upon these council members to make wise decisions that would honor you. We thank you, Father, for your blessing and your hand upon us as we dwell together in unity. We thank you, Father, for prospering our city and our region. In Jesus' name, amen.
Pledge allegiance to
the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Chris. Item 3, consider approval of agenda as presented. Are there any changes?
Yes, Mayor, there are 2 changes. We'd like to delete item 7J and then add item 9B. Councilman Walker has the wording for item 9B.
Yes. Agenda item 9B would be to take action in regards to the investigation into the mayor's employment with CRMC.
Okay, I have a motion and a second on the amended agenda. Any discussion?
Could you repeat what 9B was?
Yes. I'm looking to add 9B to the end of the meeting after the receive opinion letter from outside legal counsel. 9B would be stated as take action in regards to the investigation into the mayor's employment with CRMC.
Take action. Did we talk about that at the work session?
It's mine. We can vote on the first thing and then discuss the second if we need to. If that
That's the
helps.
second.
Well, but we're kind of doing 2 agenda changes here, right? Do we need to go ahead and separate them for discussion
There's a motion on the table. You need to act on whatever motion is.
and then have discussion? Correct.
You need to act. There's a discussion, there's a motion and a second. Now there's discussion, then you have to act on the motion before the council. The motion is to make those 2 changes to the agenda. So somebody can change the motion if they want to. Amend the motion.
Okay. Yeah,
There's a motion and a second.
we're in discussion.
Correct.
Yes, the second action. I briefly just talked about it. I think that it's important for the council to kind of conclude the investigation. We've had ample time on the receipt of the opinion letter from the outside legal counsel. And it's my hope that we can take some form of action, a motion that can be made when that time comes, but to open up an agenda item on the meeting to allow us to take some sort of action. Currently, the only thing on the agenda is just to receive an opinion letter.
Right.
And I'm requesting that we add to the agenda to take an action on the matter of the investigation. So in the quote, it is take action in regards to the investigation of the mayor's employment with CRMC.
I think we voted on February the 7th for the council asked Mr. Mills to hire outside legal counsel to assist us in investigating the giving of the mayor a high-level position at Cookeville Regional. Am I correct on that?
It was February 4th.
Well, it started February the 4th, but we finished at the 7th. We got a special call meeting.
Yes. Yeah,
Is that the,
Yeah, we, on February 7th, we had a special call meeting where we agreed to investigate, have an attorney investigate.
oh, we asked an attorney to assist the council in investigating, not an attorney to investigate. It's not in the motion.
Mine doesn't talk about the attorney's investigation. The motion is just to take action into the investigation.
Well, we voted for the council to investigate with the assistance of an attorney, outside attorney. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And we've received those findings as of last week.
Well, the findings was his brief examination of the situation. So we're still investigating by the motion that four of us passed on February the 7th.
Well, if we are, unless we cease that tonight, and that's what I'm proposing that this council does this evening, is bring closure to that in an action item. By adding it to the agenda, we could possibly do this subject to a vote by the council.
So we have a motion and a second on amended agenda. Any other discussion? All vote on the amended agenda.
Closing vote. 4 yes, motion carries.
Okay, item 4, consider reappointment to the Historic Zoning Commission. John Wood.
Mayor, council members, the current term of Mr. Peter Metz on the Historic Zoning Commission expires this month. Section 232.3 of the zoning code stipulates that the membership of the Historic Zoning Commission shall include an architect if available, and Mr. Metz fills the architect's position. Peter also resides in one of the historic districts. Members of the Historic Zoning Commission serve 5-year terms and are appointed by the mayor with confirmation by a majority vote of the city council. Mr. Metz has been contacted and has agreed to continue to serve if reappointed. The planning department recommends for his reappointment.
So move approval of Mr. Metz. Is there a second? Is there a second for Mr. Metz?
Second.
Second. Motion and second. Is there any discussion? All vote.
Closing vote. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Under old business 5A, consider approval of minutes of council meeting held on April 1st. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All vote.
Closing vote. 5 yes, motion carries.
Okay, under new business 7A, hold a public hearing and consider on first reading ordinance 02100304 amendments to the official street map. Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Amendments to the official street map are necessary to the construction of 4 new streets and the abandonment of 1 street since April of 2019. Approximately 3,900 linear feet or 0.74 miles of streets have been proposed to addition of the official street map, and a small portion of the city street was closed. The purpose of the official street map is to depict the streets for which the city of Cookeville is responsible for maintenance and to reflect the official names of these streets. These streets have been reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission as recommended by the Planning Department, and we ask for approval of the ordinance.
Thank you. This time we'll open the public hearing. Do we have anyone that would like to speak about this agenda item? Okay. We'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion from the council? We'll vote.
Closing vote. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. 7B, hold a public hearing, consider on first reading ordinance 0210305, amendments to the future land use concept plan of the Cookeville 2030 plan to depict an area located along West Broad Street in the vicinity of County Farm Road and Royal Drive from being classified as for lower density residential to being appropriate for local commercial. Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Here's the general location of this proposed future land use plan amendment. Here's an aerial view of the area. Here is the area in question. The Cookeville 2030 plan was adopted by the Cookeville Planning Commission on October 25th, 2010, and was adopted by the City Council through ordinance 0101114 on December 16th, 2010. 2 amendments to the 2030 plan have been approved since the plan was adopted. The first amendment was relative to the Tennessee Avenue project, and that was approved by the Planning Commission in May of 2012 and adopted by the City Council on August of 2012. A second amendment relative to the East 10th Street planned commercial development was adopted by the Planning Commission on October 22nd, 2018, and the City Council on January 17th, 2019. The procedure for the adoption and/or amendment to a municipal plan is specified in Tennessee Code Section 134202. The Planning Commission must review and make a recommendation to the City Council regarding any amendment to the plan. The City Council must hold a public hearing for which at least 30 days public notice must be given before considering an ordinance to amend the plan. The future land use concept plan is a component of the development plan element of the 2030 plan is intended as a guide for land use decisions. In particular, zoning and rezoning decisions should be made in harmony with the concept plan. Rezoning proposals that significantly deviate from the concept plan generally should not be approved. The Planning Commission reviewed a request to rezone property in this area from RS20 single-family residential to CL local commercial in February of 2019. The request was denied for non-compliance with the future land use plan. The Cookeville 2030 plan depicts the area as best suited for lower density residential development. Due to impacts of the 2022 tornado, the residents in the area resubmitted a request to rezone from residential to commercial properties that located along West Broad Street, and also included in that request that the city amend the 2030 plan so that the proposed rezoning would be in compliance. At the February 2019 meeting, the planning department's opinion was that the properties that have frontage on West Broad Street were suited for commercial development and would be appropriate to consider an amendment to the future land use concept plan to extend the areas depicted as being best suited for local commercial use to include the identified area. The subject area is located along West Broad Street between areas classified in the future land use concept plan to the east, west, and south as best suited for local commercial development. So you see it's already, all the areas surrounded by it, and there's a small portion that borders for mixed use commercial industrial use. The subject area extends from just west of Pippin Road to west of County Farm Road along the northern portion of West Broad Street on Highway 70, and includes all or portions of properties with frontage on West Broad Street. The amendment would extend the local commercial designated areas from the east, west, and south to include this area. 2 significant changes have occurred in this area since the 2030 plan was adopted. One of these changes have occurred since the Planning Commission denied the previous rezoning request in February of 2019. First, sanitary sewer service was extended to serve this area in March of 2018. When the lower density residential designation was established, sanitary sewer service was not available. With the extension of sewer, utility service is now adequate for local commercial development. Second, this area was one of the most impacted areas in the Cookeville city limits during the March 2020 tornado. We've got some aerial views. This is what it looks like after the impacts of the 2020 tornado. Many of the residential structures located in the area were destroyed or severely damaged. While the previous residential development pattern may have influenced the lower density residential future land use classification, the devastation of the 2020 tornado has altered existing development in the area. The subject area has characteristics appropriate for local commercial development. And these include frontage on streets of a major collector or higher classification and access to adequate utilities. West Broad Street is classified as a major arterial street. Traffic counts on West Broad Street east of Tennessee Avenue show an average daily traffic count of 11,233 vehicles in February 2019 and 10,717 vehicles in January 2020. West Broad Street is identified in the Cookeville Major Street Plan to need improvements. Specifically, the Major Street Plan includes an improvement project to widen West Broad Street from West Spring Street to Tennessee Avenue from 2 lanes to a 3 or 5 lane facility. It is anticipated that traffic will continue to increase along West Broad Street, especially as properties along Tennessee Avenue develop. Generally, lower density residential development is better suited on properties with frontage on minor, collector, or local street classifications. Many of the residents in the area have expressed concerns with rebuilding single-family residences on this major arterial street. The future land use concept plan identifies most of the entire street frontage along West Broad Street, along Highway 70, West Broad Street, and East Spring Street is being best suited for some type of commercial development, including areas adjacent to the subject area to the east, west, and south along West Broad Street. These areas were included as being best suited for local commercial development when the 2030 plan was adopted. This amendment was unanimously approved by the Planning Commission as recommended by the Planning Department. And I respectfully ask for your approval of the ordinance, and I'm happy to try to answer any questions the council has.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open a public hearing. Do we have anyone that would like to speak about this matter? Yes, come to the lectern and identify yourself, please.
Can you hear me? I can't tell with the mask. My name is Jane Barnes, and I'm representing my mother, Betty Newman, who lives at 1694 West Broad Street, which is right across the street from this. When the 2030 plan was originally completed, there was a shortage of properties for single-family residential, not a shortage of commercial. And like he said, it's been changed twice, but those were for major projects. There's no major project for these properties or no plan for these properties. Going from low-density residential, which according to the plan is 4 houses per acre, to commercial is a big change. It's going to affect a large area of residential houses across the street and behind this, even though you can't tell that on the map. On this section of Highway 70, people drive way too fast. Once they go through Jackson, they fly through there. There's a lot of wrecks there on West Broad Street and County Farm Road. So the area in that instance would not be suitable for a lot of small commercial businesses because people wouldn't be able to get in and out of those areas. And a lot of the homes in the area, you know, are 65 to 95 years old and have been there for a long time, even prior to annexation. So I would appreciate if you consider maybe just denying the future land use to commercial at this time, because there's no major plan for this at this time. And maybe something will come down the road. Thank you. And if you have any questions for me, I'll feel free to answer them.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak about this? Okay. Is there a motion on as proposed? So motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion is second. Questions or comments from the council?
Question, can you go to the aerial photos, please?
This is an aerial that shows an area it's zoomed in, taken out. This is the other aerial. The commercial zoning starts right here, right? I mean, this is already zoned commercial on this side. This is commercial zoning on this side, which would be discussed on the second item. All this to the south, I mean, we don't have an existing zoning map on here because this was a future land use plan amendment, but these are all, the majority of these are already zoned commercial. There's a couple of residential properties here, and there's a portion of the Patton House that's zoned residential, but that's owned by the county, and it's already been used for a semi-commercial use, for a semi-public use where it was a museum before. But that's the aerial. This was before the tornado. You can see the structures that are existing there. And after the tornado, really you have 3 structures that remain, one on the east side, one on the west side, and this one in the middle. And there's a portion of this one that's still there, but everything else was demolished during the 2020 tornado.
Of the structures there, how many of them are currently commercial?
None of these on the north side of the road are, and that's what the subject of the request. The property owners that own those properties, they all approached the Planning Commission about making this change. They petitioned. Everyone that's really subject to the request has either submitted a signed petition or asked that their properties be rezoned because of the impacts that major arterial street has on a lower density residential type of development out there.
Thank you.
So put that in layman's terms, the petitioners, they could make themselves whole again better by it being commercial versus us leaving it residential. Is that what I understand?
Well, I think they, obviously there's more value to commercial property than residential property, but I don't think anybody had any interest in, that rebuilding at this time. They were pursuing this option versus being held to a single-family residential development pattern on a major arterial street.
And there were several petitioners, right? Not just.
Yeah, well, so the initial petition included everybody except for one property owner on this east boundary. When the planning commission made this recommendation, they recommended that the planning department contact them. I did contact that property owner, and they did want to be included in the rezoning request. They just didn't initially file the petition. So it was 100% of the folks on that area wanted to be included. And this is really relative to the rezoning request, but the plan needs to be amended before, the property could be rezoned. It's important to note that everything on Broad is considered appropriate for, for a local commercial designation, essentially. I mean, this is a zoomed out view. You can see that's the only little pocket that remained as lower density residential. And at the time the 2030 plan was adopted, it was an existing single family residential pattern and there was no sewer service to the area. And that's been two significant changes that happened as I explained.
Any other questions or comments from the council?
Yes.
Councilman Wong?
Ms. Barnes came out to my house this afternoon and we spent some time on my front porch. She went over all of this. And what she said about the 2030 plan, deviating from the 2030 plan, something needs to be major to do that. But after getting here and talking to Mr. Ward, the fact that the tornado disrupted everything and changed the parameters for this is the thing that's convinced me that it's reasonable to do this, to change the 2030 plan. If we hadn't had the tornado, it disrupted all the structures out there, I think it'd be reasonable to keep it as it is. But the fact that we did, and there's a lot of devastation here in the city and then out in the county, I think it's reasonable to change the 2030 plan.
I have one more comment. I appreciate Ms. Barnes' service to the city and understand her knowledge in this matter as well. I do think that the tornado does have an impact in the area and that property owners' rights are very important in this matter. With 100% of the current owners of the properties seeking for our city to take this action, I think that weighs a lot. However, I do sympathize with the effects that it may have on someone who is still remaining in that area and living in that area and that is seeing their neighborhood drastically change. And if it wasn't for Highway 70 being a major arterial and it being appropriate for commercial development in general, I think that it is important to reserve people's neighborhoods. In this matter, I think that the unfortunate events of the tornado has considerably hurt that. And unfortunately, it's changed the opinions of a lot of landowners. And, that's my interpretation of it. But
I know it doesn't show on the map, but a lot of people across the street are single family property owners. And there's a large area, even though it doesn't show up on this screen, are single family residential owners that are going to be affected. It's not just going to be a few houses, it's going to be a big area. So.
Yeah, I think that, and I can understand how this will have an impact, but, there's many areas of our city that where commercial and residential do meet and are successful. So with it being a lower classification of local commercial, I can support that.
Okay. Any other comments? I'll vote.
Closing vote. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. 7C, hold a public hearing and consider on first reading ordinance O210306, rezoning 1629, 1639, 1681, 1691, 1703, 1727, 1729, 1743, 1771, and 1797 West Broad Street and 10 Royal Oak Drive from RS20 to CL Local Commercial. Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. This is the area that was just considered for the future land use plan amendment. Here's the location map. Here's an aerial view of these properties. Here's the existing zoning pattern. I probably should have had this slide in with the future land use plan amendment, but you see, there's 3 lots on the south side that would remain as residential with frontage, and this is a portion of the Patton House property that would remain as residential. Everything else is zone CL. I mean, there are existing residences on those properties, but it's important to note they are still zone commercial and they could be developed at commercial anytime, even if any of these properties were restricted to RS20 development patterns. This subject area consists of 11 parcels or portions of parcels and a total of approximately 15 acres. It's bordered by RS20 single-family residential to the north, RS20 and CL local commercial to the east, CO local commercial, CI commercial industrial mixed use, and RS20 to the south, and CO local commercial to the west. Prior to the March 2020 tornado, there were 11 single-family detached homes located on these properties, but now only 3 structures remain and a portion of 1 other. A request to rezone this area was denied by the Planning Commission in February 2019 for noncompliance with the future land use plan. When that request was considered in 2019, the Planning Department's opinion was that the area was suited for commercial development and an amendment to the future land use concept plan would be appropriate. The area has characteristics appropriate for local commercial zoning, and analysis of which was included in the prior item we just considered. These characteristics include access to adequate utilities and frontage on streets classified as major collector or higher. Like the council said, the 2020 tornado definitely had a significant impact on this subject area. All of the property owners included in the rezoning area have submitted signed petitions or contacted the planning department requesting that the property be rezoned from RS20 to CL local commercial. This rezoning was again unanimously approved by the Planning Commission as recommended by the Planning Department, and I respectfully ask for your approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have on this item.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open the public hearing portion. Anyone like to speak about this matter? Yes, Ms. Bond.
I'd just like to go ahead and be on record on behalf of my mother that she is opposed to this. I mean, CL could allow a lot of uses that may not be appropriate next to single-family residential houses. And like I said, there's a lot of houses behind it, across the street, and it's going to affect these people. So I just want that to go on file for her.
And Ms. Barnes, where exactly was your mother's house?
Okay. Right here, and it goes all the way here. This has been in the city for a long time. Hers goes up to Miss Patton's.
Okay.
So it goes all the way to railroad track and there.
Okay.
But like I said, these are all single family home houses right there.
Thank you.
So, but I just want to go on record for her.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we'll close the sorry. We'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
So
Motion is second. Any comments or questions about this from the council? All vote.
Closing the vote. 5 yes, motion carries.
thank you.
Thank you. 7D, consider resolution R210413, authorizing the execution of a cooperation agreement for the payment in lieu of taxes for Highlands Residential Services properties identified as Oak Tree Towers and Hickory Valley Apartments. Mr. Mills.
Mayor and council members, under the Tennessee Code, specifically section 675206, the property of housing authorities are exempt from all taxes and special assessments, provided that in lieu of such taxes, the housing authority shall make payments for services furnished by the city. These services, of course, include police, fire, garbage, and brush collection, street and sidewalk maintenance, and codes enforcement. Agreements have previously been approved by the city for Highlands Residential, other residential properties. Most recently in 2018, the agreement was approved by the city council for the Walnut Village Apartments. That agreement was for a 25-year period with an annual payment in lieu of taxes of $4,413.60. And for that 80-unit housing facility, that works out to $55.17 per unit annually. Two new developments are Oak Tree Towers, a 50-unit apartment complex for seniors located on Buffalo Valley Road. In Hickory Valley, a proposed 48-unit mixed-use housing development also located off Buffalo Valley. Oak Tree Towers should be completed in the next few weeks, and it's expected that Hickory Valley development will start soon. In the request, Highlands Residential originally proposed a pilot payment of $75 per unit or $7,350 annually for the 98 units. After some negotiation, we have agreed to proposing a flat rate of $110 per unit, which is $10,780 a year for a 20-year period. While this amount will not cover the cost of providing the various city services to the development, it is very important to note that Highlands Residential is the primary provider of actual affordable housing in our area, and the city support is vital to their success. As we discussed on Monday, we have revised the agreement that you currently have to include a provision that the amount of the pilot may be renegotiated after 15 years, and to specify that the length of the agreement is 20 years and can be extended by vote at any point during the 20-year lease agreement or pilot agreement. It should also be noted that the Putnam County Commission will also have to approve this agreement, which we, assuming the council approves this, we will submit it to the county commission for their approval. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them, but I would recommend for your approval of the agreement.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion and second. Any comments from the council?
Closing the vote. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. 7E, accept termination letter from Carr, Riggs and Ingram LLC, formerly Duncan, Wheeler and Wilkerson. Ms. Emerald.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, Duncan, Wheeler and Wilkerson CPAs has done the annual audit for the city for many, many years. And in June of 2019, City Council had approved them again to do the fiscal year 2019, fiscal year 2020, and the current fiscal year 2021 audit. However, last summer, the firm was sold and merged into Carr, Riggs and Ingram CPAs. The management of CRI has made the decision that it is not in the best interest of the firm to continue doing the audit of the city. They notified us in writing that they are withdrawing and will not be doing the fiscal year 2021 audit, and I would recommend that council accept their letter.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Call vote.
Closing the vote. 5 yes, motion carries.
7F, consider approval of audit contract for fiscal year ended June 30, 2021. Ms. Emerald.
Mayor and council members, in light of the resignation or termination of the previous auditor, we advertised for proposals for a qualified CPA firm to perform the annual audit of the city for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2021. We reviewed the proposals looking for a firm that would best meet the needs of the city. The firm had to have experience in governmental and utilities in auditing. We are recommending the firm Blankenship CPA Group. The firm is located in Middle Tennessee with offices in Brentwood, Dixon, Goodlettsville, Mount Juliet, Murfreesboro, and Nashville, and they have a professional staff of 120. Current clients include the city of Gallatin, Mount Juliet, Goodlettsville, Middle Tennessee Natural Gas, Greater Dixon Gas Authority, and Water Authority of Dixon County. We have negotiated a fee for them for the fiscal year 21 audit as $50,000 for the audit, not to exceed $2,000 for out-of-pocket incidentals, and if necessary for a single audit, $4,500 for one major program and $2,500 for each additional major program, and I respectfully request your approval.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any comments or questions from the council? All vote.
Closing vote. 5 yes, motion carries.
7G, consider resolution R 210412, expressing official intent that certain expenditures to be incurred in connection with certain public works projects and related expenditures being reimbursed from proceeds of notes, bonds, or other indebtedness to be issued by the city of Cookeville. Ms. Emmel.
Mayor and council, we are proceeding with plans for the 10th Street widening project and intend to finance that project with a bond issue later this year. Expenditures related to the project will be incurred prior to the issuance of the bond, and this resolution documents our intent to reimburse those expenditures out of that future bond issue. I'll be happy to answer any questions, but would recommend your approval.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any comments or questions?
Go.
Yes, sir.
I'm excited. This is one of our first steps to get this project started. So thanks for all of your hard work.
Any other comments? All vote.
Closing vote. 5 yes, motion carries.
7H, consider approval to purchase traffic signal poles and mast arms for the intersection of East 10th Street and Doris Drive. Greg Brown.
Mayor and council, as part of the city's agreement with the developers for the development at the corner of Old Kentucky and 10th Street, the city would install a traffic signal at Doris Drive with the developers paying for the equipment. We've already been reimbursed for this equipment. This is a sole source provider. The cost of the mast arm and poles is $34,345. I would request your approval.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All vote.
Closing vote. 5 yes, motion carries.
7I, consider resolution R 210414 to acquire by donation, negotiation, or eminent domain, if necessary, certain land rights relating to improvements to East 10th Street from Chocolate Drive to Fisk Road. Greg Brown.
Mayor and council, this resolution would give permission to the city manager to acquire property for the widening of 10th Street from Chocolate Drive to Fisk Road. And I would request your approval.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any comments or questions from the council? All vote.
Closing vote. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. And 7K, consider approval of property acquisition services contract for improvements to East 10th Street from Wilson Avenue to Fisk Road. Greg Brown.
Mayor and council, we would like to hire a property acquisition consultant to acquire property for the 10th Street widening from Wilson Avenue to Fisk Road. We've negotiated the price with Carlton Associates for a not to exceed amount of $290,000, and I would request your approval.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion and second. Any questions, comments from the council? All vote.
Closing vote. 5 yes, motion carries.
7L, consider approval of contract for performing property acquisition closings for property acquired for the improvements to East 10th Street from Fisk Road to Chocolate Drive. Greg Brown.
Mayor and council, this would authorize the city manager to get David Ledbetter to perform all the closings for the property acquisitions for the acquisition of property on 10th Street. The cost for the closings, title search, and document preparation is $525 per tract. I would recommend your approval.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any comments or questions from the council? All vote.
Closing vote. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. 7M, consider approving the purchase of playground equipment to replace one playground at Cane Creek Park utilizing the Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Agreement. Rick Woods.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Where's my item? Here we go. Mayor, members of council, this is a request is for the replacement of one of our older playground systems at Cane Creek Park. We've had problems with this outdated play equipment, and we've been unable to get replacement parts. And this will update the playground nearest the restroom and the picnic shelter at the top of the hill. The total price is $58,829.20 and will be purchased through the Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Agreement. Here is a photograph of the old equipment that we will be replacing. Here is another rendering of what the new system will look like. Here is another angle of that. This is a budgeted item, and I recommend your approval. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any comments or questions from the council? All vote.
Closing the vote. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. 7N, consider approving the purchase of playground synthetic surfacing for one playground at Cane Creek Park utilizing HGAC Cooperative Purchasing Agreement. Rick Woods.
Thank you. This second item is for the playground safety surfacing to go beneath the play system that we just discussed. This is a synthetic grass turf that is padded and designed specifically for playgrounds and meets the playground safety standards. This will be purchased through the HGAC Cooperative Purchasing Agreement, and the total is $22,158.75. Here is a cross-section of what that surfacing looks like. It looks like grass on top, has padding beneath it. This is also a budgeted item under the playground replacement item that we previously discussed, and I would be happy to answer any questions, and I recommend your approval.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion and second. Any comments or questions?
I do have a kind of random question. If you go back to infield, does it have that little black?
Yes.
That does seem to transfer
Yes, it does have some of that. Yes.
the little bitty black. Okay, but not a lot.
No.
Okay.
How often do you have to refill that?
I don't have that information with me and I don't recall, but I can check on that and let you know.
Any other comments? All right, all vote.
Closing the vote. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. 7O, consider approving the purchase of shade structures for Parkview Skate Park and bleachers at Cane Creek Sportsplex utilizing Sourcewell Purchasing Agreement. Rick Woods.
Thank you, council members. We're looking to enhance the experience of the fans in the stands at the Cane Creek Sportsplex by placing shade over each of the 8 sets of bleachers at the 4 adult fields. This will be a very popular thing for our weekend tournament directors and the participants there. We're also requesting similar shade structures to be placed over the park benches in the viewing area at Parkview Skate Park. This is a total of 11 different shade structures, and they're all made by the same manufacturer that built those that we recently placed over at the Heart of the City playground. Those have proved to be very popular and very attractive. The total for all this is $75,551.20, and this will be purchased through our agreement with Sourcewell Purchasing Cooperative. Here is a photograph of what those shade structures, an example of what those shade structures look like. This is a budgeted item, and I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I would recommend your approval.
So they'll go over the bleachers.
To go over the bleachers, these will be, yes.
Hold on just a second. Is there a motion?
I'm sorry.
So moved.
Motion and second. Now, comments and questions from the council.
Thank you.
Yes, these will go over each of the 8 bleachers at the Sportsplex. Those will actually be supported on all 4 corners. They won't be cantilevered like the one that you see here. But the ones at the Sportsplex, it's a larger area. They're a little bit taller, and those will be supported. It's more of a hip style. But the same shade kind of structure, same fabric.
Any other comments or questions from the council?
As a mom who frequents the skate park and soon to be the Cane Creek baseball fields, I'm very thankful for this. So thank you for getting this together.
Thank you.
I've got a random question. Can you put lighting underneath that? I know that you want it shade, but at nighttime, if you're watching a ball game, it could possibly get really dark. Is that?
There's no mechanism for putting specific lighting in there. We can look at ways to do that possibly if that proves to be something that we feel is needed. I think there's enough ambient light at the Sportsplex from the lights that light the field that it won't be an issue. And these shade structures do allow some light to come through. It's just not, it's not like a hard roof.
The ones at the playground seem to, once you're under it, it's not, from what I've experienced, it's not too dark. There's still enough light that comes through that it doesn't,
Right.
yeah.
Any other comments? All right, call vote.
Closing vote. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. 7P, consider approval to purchase one 26-foot electric scissor lift utilizing Sourcewell Purchasing Cooperative. Ronnie Kelly, Water Department.
Mayor and council, we're requesting authorization to purchase a scissor lift from United Rentals, which was the low bidder on the Sourcewell contract. The price was $17,554.36 and would recommend approval.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion is second. Any comments or questions from the council?
It's a scissor lift.
It's a flat platform, and when it goes up, there's like scissors that, I don't know how to describe, probably should have put a picture on here. We have one down at our wastewater plant. We need one up at our warehouse facilities. It's a platform that'll let you go up 28 feet
Okay,
high.
you can get on top of the
Oh,
platform.
yeah, you're on top of it.
Goes like this.
Yeah, and it's mobile. You can drive it around, so forth.
Okay.
Any comments or questions? Call vote.
Closing the vote. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. 7Q, consider approval of additional cost for emergency repair to 2 161-69 kV transformers at Cane Creek Substation. Electric Department, Carl Haney.
Mayor and council members, at the January 7th council meeting, it was approved to repair 2 of our transformers at our Cane Creek substation. While those repairs were being made, the area was forecast for several severe storms for a few days, and we felt it necessary to return those transformers to operable condition, since those did provide backup to 3 of our substations. That resulted in additional cost of $3,097.08, and this will bring the total cost of the project to $65,147.08, and I would recommend your approval.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion second. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. A few council meetings ago, we originally did this, correct? Where we
Yes.
talked about repairing substations. What's the status on that overall?
Well, those are back to normal condition at those, so we do have our backup for those 3 substations back to normal. There's still some testing that was involved with that they'll come back and do, but they are.
So all of our backups are in place.
All of our
except for just finishing this little project.
Yeah, just finishing it, but yes, they're all back in operable condition right now.
Any other comments or questions? Vote.
Closing vote. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. 7R, consider ratifying execution of an option to purchase approximately 4.47 acres of property identified as parcel 28 on tax map 54A Group G and located off McClellan Avenue, and authorizing the city manager to exercise the option and proceed with the purchase of the property for an addition to West End Park. Mr. Mills.
Mayor and council members, Mayor, as you stated, I'm requesting your authorization to purchase a parcel of property located at 223 McClellan Avenue for the purpose of expanding our West End Park. The property is owned by Jeffrey Kistler, and it consists of about 20,000 square feet. The proposed purchase price is $22,500. Mr. Kistler acquired the property in 2017, purchasing it from the Elk River Presbytery of the Cumberland Presbyterian Church in America for $9,600. He indicated that an appraisal of the property had been completed in 2019, which had placed the value at over $19,000. However, a copy of the appraisal has not been provided. As you know, we've been in the process of completing numerous improvements to West End Park, which were identified in a meeting with the residents from the neighborhood last fall. The basketball court has been completely redone and sidewalks have been repaired. Additional playground equipment and shade structures have been purchased and should be installed in the next few weeks. Also, with the generous assistance of the electric department, much of the overgrown vegetation around the multi-use field has been cleared. The need for more parking was also mentioned in the neighborhood meeting, and the parcel we are proposing for purchase is located adjacent to the multi-use field, as you can see on the screen. And we believe would be a good location to provide additional parking for the park and for the multi-use field. Opportunities to expand our park facilities are rare, and I respectfully request that the council approve the execution of an option agreement to purchase the property at 223 McClellan, and that you authorize the city manager to exercise the option and proceed with the purchase of the property.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any comments or questions from the council? I'll vote.
Closing the vote. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. At this time, that concludes the first agenda portion of the meeting. It's time for the citizens that would like to speak to the council on non-agenda items. Do we have anyone? Okay. Go to 9A, receive opinion letter from outside legal counsel retained to investigate the hiring of the mayor by Cookeville Regional Medical Center. Mr. Mills.
Mayor, council members, the council I had February 4th, I guess February 7th, 2021 meeting directed me to retain the services of outside legal counsel to assist the city council in investigating the hiring of Mayor Shelton by the Cookeville Regional Medical Center. I subsequently retained the services of attorney William Carver from the Knoxville law firm Kramer Racing. Mr. Carver has completed his investigation and has submitted for the council's receipt an opinion letter. For the reasons set forth in the letter, the investigation concludes that Mayor Shelton did not violate any applicable city charter provision or state statutes when he applied for, interviewed, and accepted a job with CRMC. I would respectfully request that the council officially receive and accept Mr. Carver's opinion letter, which will fulfill the council's February directive.
Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion.
Yes, I've got some discussion. Will this letter be entered into record?
It'll be part of the minutes.
The full letter will be part of the minutes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then I've got some further discussion on the attorney's findings and acceptance of this letter. We received these findings last week individually and had time to review them. I think that there are some important things that we should focus on from these things. And I would appreciate that the following comments also be entered into the record. I would like to say that these findings are consistent with my understanding of the opinions provided by the city attorney, Dan Rader, prior to the investigation. And I appreciate all the city attorney's accuracy and knowledge in this matter and his work for the city. This investigation by an outside counsel has also been significant for several reasons. First, with the acceptance of this written legal opinion, we can provide greater clarity to the public of the city's limited role in the operations and management of the city-owned hospital. Though many members of the public believe that the city council is responsible for the operations of CRMC, we find much clarity in Mr. Carver's summary of the roles and responsibilities of the council in regards to CRMC. I'd like to share that opinion from the letter now. our understanding through various conversations with the city and CRMC officials and review of multiple documents is that, as discussed above, CRMC is a community hospital established by a private act and overseen by an independent board of trustees, as set forth in Section 9 of the private act. The city council plays 3 roles related to CRMC. First, Section 2.056 and 9.01 of the charter authorizes city council to appoint members of the hospital board of trustees. Second, CRMC must provide the city council financial statements and other reports as may be required by said council, as set forth in Section 13 of the private act, in addition to submitting annually to the Cookeville City Council a budget as required by CRMC bylaws, Section 3.7.11. The city of Cookeville, however, does not provide funding to CRMC. Third, the city of Cookeville actually owns the real property where CRMC operates. I'll continue. Second, the attorney concluded the following, as Mr. Mills read earlier. For reasons set forth in this letter, our investigation concludes that Mayor Shelton did not violate any applicable city charter provisions or state statutes when he applied for, interviewed, and accepted a job with CRMC. Third, the attorney found that, and I again quote from the letter, the scope of this investigation performed on behalf of the city must be limited to whether Mr. Shelton violated any city codes or state statutes. This investigation does not address whether Mr. Shelton or CRMC's process to hire a chief strategy officer violated the CRMC's charter or bylaws. That analysis, if desired, must be undertaken by CRMC or its board of trustees. And he ended that with board. I added the board of trustees. In fact, the attorney addressed the council's authority within the scope of the investigation as follows. CRMC's Private Act, Section 12, provides the Cookeville City Council shall have an authority to inquire into the operation of the hospital facilities, and to this end, empowered to have access and examine business records of said hospital facilities during regular business hours. In our view, Section 12 is limited to actual hospital facilities, i.e. real property and perhaps personal property, equipment, fixtures, etc. We base this conclusion on the limited scope of the city council's authority to oversee CRMC as further discussed later in this letter. It goes on to say, thus, the scope of this investigation performed on behalf of the city must be limited to whether Mr. Shelton violated any city codes or state statutes. This investigation does not address whether Mr. Shelton or CRMC's process to hire a chief strategy officer violated CRMC's charter or bylaws. That analysis, if desired, must be undertaken by CRMC or its board. Ultimately, it's my interpretation that the findings are that the buck stops at the Board of Trustees concerning the operations of CRMC and its employees. We can simply look at the outside financial reports regarding facilities of the hospital. We appoint board members and we look at their budget. We have a limited role in CRMC, even though the perception of the public is that it is a city-owned hospital. I think that's an important thing to know. And these findings are consistent with information we had before. So I believe that this letter is accurate. I believe that this attorney has given us an accurate opinion. And that's all the comments I have on the matter.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yes.
Councilman Warren.
I've read the same letter and I agree with you 100%, Councilman Walker. The thing I want to bring out is this was a very limited investigation. As what you said, thus the scope of this investigation performed on behalf of the city must be limited to whether Mr. Shelton violated any city code or state statutes. This investigation does not address whether Mr. Shelton or CRMC's process to hire a chief strategy officer violates CRMC's charter or bylaws. This analysis, if desired, must be undertaken by CRMC or its board. And that's the problem. They have not done an investigation, to my knowledge. They've just sat back and said things are doing okay. And so I think it would be reasonable to ask the hospital board to undertake an investigation of the hiring of Mayor Shelton. I'll make that as a motion.
Second.
Already a motion on the paper. As an amendment, excuse me. As an amendment. I apologize.
Can this, as it's written, be amended to include an action item since it wasn't an action item?
The board, if the city council votes, vote on this amendment.
Right.
I think they can vote on it.
Okay. So there's a
If they want to, you made an amendment, there needs to be a second, and then you vote on it.
motion and a second on that.
I don't know if there,
I'll
all I
second
heard
it.
was the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we'll repeat the motion.
The motion, the amendment, excuse me. The amendment is to ask the Board of Trustees of Cookeville Regional Medical Center to investigate the actions that led to the hiring of Mayor Shelton as Chief Strategy Officer back in from August of 2020 until December.
Well, is it not illegal, correct, that this council can't ask an action of of an independent as stated in this letter to board?
Council can make a request, but the council cannot require. I'm not requiring, I'm asking. I'm just asking. This council could, I don't know, whatever it was, this council could request. They can request the city of Backstreet to request.
Very good.
The county, but you
All right.
can't require any of these governmental entities to specifically do anything.
Okay. There's a motion and a second to amend it to ask the Board of Trustees to investigate this.
I got a little bit of discussion on the amendment. I think it'd be more appropriate to go ahead and receive this letter and receive this information prior to making any further motions or taking any further action. We haven't amended the agenda to take action in regards to the investigation into the mayor's employment of CRMC as the next agenda item. I feel that amending this current agenda item in motion keeps us from accepting the letter and accepting the facts involved from the letter and the opinion of the attorney. And therefore, I would be against any sort of amendment of that so that we could first accept the letter.
Your point is well taken, Councilman Walker. So if it's all right with my seconder, I'll withdraw the motion for right now until we do the action thing. That, okay.
Okay, so the amendment, motion and amendment have been rescinded. And we're back to the original receiving of the item. Is there any more comments or?
I've got a small comment. I'm really worried about some of the basic functions that the council can make. Now, if the Cookeville Regional Medical Center asked to sell property, to lease property, and with the opinion of the attorney, the mayor has to abstain, we will never be able to get a unanimous vote. So at that point, the hospital, while the mayor has to abstain, will never be able to sell property or lease property.
Doesn't require.
In section 15.
I'd have to look at it. It's been a long time since I looked at it, but. I don't know the answer to that.
Any other comments? Okay, voting to receive the report.
Closing the vote. 4 yes, 1 abstain, motion carries.
Okay, and then,
I will say this, if the hospital voted to purchase property or lease property, and Mr. Shelton was not an owner or a lessor of that property, he would not have a conflict of interest, and there would be no reason for him to abstain. From a legal standpoint, it would be purely his discretion to do that. But unless he was selling property to the hospital or leasing property to the hospital, he would have no direct conflict of interest, and there would be no requirement for him to abstain. To come back to what you had said, what even if it is.
okay.
Only if he had a financial interest in that transaction.
9B, consider, I don't, do you have it?
Yeah, I-
Down how you said it? 9B, Councilman Walker.
Take action in regards to the investigation into the mayor's employment with CRMC.
So is there a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to cease the investigation into the legality and or appearance of impropriety of the mayor being hired as a high-level employee with the city-owned Cookeville Regional Medical Center and forward the written findings from Attorney William Carver to the members of the CRMC Board of Trustees.
Would you repeat that, please?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to cease the investigation into the legality and or appearance of impropriety of the mayor being hired as a high-level employee with the city-owned Cookeville Regional Medical Center and forward the written findings from Attorney William Carver to the members of the CRMC Board of Trustees.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Now, comments or questions about this item?
Yeah, I'd like to support that motion. When this all started, there's a lot of questions that are asked. And it's hard to investigate something and not assume that accusations are being made. I don't feel like this council, or at least it wasn't my intention to make any accusations of anyone, but rather to build clarity for the public and to hopefully conclude a matter of uncertainty for this council. I am somewhat disappointed that the findings have shown that the Cookeville City Council's role in the hospital operations are much more limited than I was aware of in the beginning. And that is that no consequence other than studying this further. That is what has been acknowledged by multiple attorneys. I have a lot of respect for the mayor, and I hope that we've concluded this with all fairness. And I want to see that this council does reach some sort of conclusion in the matter, even though its scope is limited. I don't see that this council can do anything else at this time. And so to hang an investigation over the mayor from this council going forward, when we have a limited role which we can serve in the matter, would be unnecessary. And that I think it's important for this council to move forward, get down to business. I trust that we've appointed smart, respectable people into the positions of the Board of Trustees. I don't feel that it's necessary for this council to ask them to do anything other than what they've already agreed to do. I respect their own opinions and their own actions. And as this matter is at this point in time, I don't see that this council can go forward any further. With that being said, I wish that we could bring a more decisive conclusion, but it is hard to, the analogy being, it's hard to decide what's wrong with a car without looking under the hood and tell you if it's operating. It could be operating great, and we don't know. Or we could have a problem, but without looking at the oil and checking under the hood, you just don't know. And I think that that's a problem, and that's something that I wish that this council could address. But with that being said, from the outside and from what this council can view, Mr. Shelton hadn't done anything wrong in the eyes of this council. And for what this council has the authority to look at, he hasn't violated anything that this council has authority over. And so with that being said, I think we can offer that conclusion. And then that conclusion is made in the attorney's findings. So I think it is appropriate this time to cease the investigation.
Any other comments? All vote.
Closing the vote. 4 yes, 1 no, motion carries.
Thank you. That concludes our meeting.
Thank you all for what y'all are doing, seriously, yeah. Yeah, we appreciate what y'all are doing, like I said. It's a huge need.
Appreciate it. Yeah.